Hello everybody, I'm Scotty. Welcome back to Scotties Clock World. Today we're going to learn how to make tapered pins for use in clock movements and how to finish them off properly so that they look like this. That's a proper finished tapered pin with rounded ends at 45 degrees on both ends. This is not. It's rough, it's been hacked off either end. You can see there's marks on it there where they've tried to cut it and it didn't get through properly. That is not acceptable. It's very poor workmanship. Alright, let's get underway. First thing we'll do is we'll remove the old pin, putting a pair of pliers on it and pushing against the post. They tend to come out rather easily. That's a pin we're going to replace. You can see how rough it is on either end. Just sort of hacked off, and that's definitely not good enough. Right, put that aside. Now the first thing we do is rummage through our box of tapered pins and find one that fits the hole in the post, which is that one there. That's the pin we're going to use for today's lesson. Right, first thing we've got to do is push the pin in so it's quite tight. With your fingers will do, you don't need pliers on it. And then mark on the pin with a felt tip pen where you want to cut it and remove the excess. And it should be approximately the same on either side, so you've got about the same amount of pin hanging out both sides. So I'll bring this side up a little bit more. Here we go, you can see the black marks on it. Let that sit for a moment to let it dry. We don't want to wipe it off with our hands when we take it out. Alright, we'll remove the pin very carefully because it's not in there, it's not pushed in there hard. We'll take that out, put it in our dish, and then move on to the next part of the operation. You can see here I have a bench vise with a piece of timber in it, a bit of hardwood that I've filed a section down in here, and I've got two notches cut in there. Those notches are to hold the tapered pin while we're filing it down. I'll put that piece of wood back into the vise and align it to make it a little bit easier to see. There's our tapered pin that we're going to work on. So the first thing we have to do is remove the excess material that we don't need. I've cut the thick end off with a hacksaw because my end cutters won't cut through that amount of material. It's a bit too thick. However, we'll reverse the pin. In actual fact, I'll put it into a pin vise now to hold it while we cut the other end off it. Should fit in there. Yep, tighten the pin vise down, roll it round. That's where we're going to cut it. I'll put my end cutters on that and then cut off the section that we don't need. That's got him, alright. There's another rough end there, which is the way that most people leave their tapered pins when they put them into clocks. And it's very poor workmanship, so we're going to find out how to do it properly. So that's the length of the tapered pin that we've got. We'll bring our movement over and then have a quick look to check to make sure that the pin is the right size. And there it is there. We can probably take a tiny little bit off that end still, which I'll do now. Slip the pin back into the post again, push it through. There we go. That's more even on either side now. Right, remove the pin from the movement, like so. Put the movement aside and then put the pin into a pin vise. Align it in the center and then tighten it down so that the tapered pin doesn't move round. Okay, this is the tool we normally use for this job. It's called a pivot file. They're pretty expensive. They're very, very finely cut. It has a pivot file on one end and a burnisher on the other end. But because we're doing a basic beginner's course, we're going to use these files that I talked about in the first episode. Flat files, fine one and a coarser one. Now we've got our tapered pin in a pin vise. So the first thing we do is we rest it in one of the little grooves there I was telling you about, so it doesn't move round like so. And then with a coarser file, run over the rough point on the end while turning the pin vise in your fingers. What we're doing is we're flattening the end for a start. We want that to be nice and flat and smooth. Right, the next part of the operation is we're going to put on the end of the tapered pin here, from about half that length, or third of that length actually, to the end, a 45-degree bevel on it. So we align the tapered pin back in our piece of timber, and once again using our coarser file, run it across the end of the tapered pin. Turning the pin vise as you go and maintaining an approximate 45-degree angle. Check it from time to time to see how you're going. Yep, that's not looking too bad. Needs a bit more though, so we'll line it up. Keep spinning the pin vise in your hand. Check it again. Yep, that looks alright. So now we take our fine file that we saw earlier, line the tapered pin back into the slot, and very carefully run the fine file over the end of the tapered pin that we've already flattened. Once that's right, you then put the tapered pin back into that slot on our piece of wood again, and then start running over 45-degree bevel we've put on it. Once again, turning the pin vise. You can see there occasionally the piece of wood jumps. That's because the bevel is not flat yet. There's a rough spot on it. That's why it jumps. Once it stops jumping, you can be pretty sure that you've finished it off correctly. That looks alright. I'll just run over the end a couple more times in case it's a bit pointy. And there it is. That's the first part of the operation. We've done one end. We're now going to take the tapered pin out of the pin vise, turn it round so we can access the other end of it, slide it back into the pin vise, tighten the vise up. There we have it. You can see that the tapered pin there doesn't fall very far over this slot, so I'll release the pin vise and pull the tapered pin out just a little bit more to give us a little bit more room to work on. Tighten it down again. There we go. It's now hanging out over the end. Right, we're ready to start the other end of the tapered pin now. Once again, our coarser file, running it carefully over the end of the tapered pin. Smooth the end down. Turning the pin vise while you're doing it. Take it out and check it periodically to see what it looks like. That's not looking too bad actually, tiny bit more. Right, now we'll put a 45-degree bevel on it with our coarse file once again. Turn the pin vise around in your hand. You can feel the rough parts being removed. Certainly smoothing off a bit now. Right, what have we got? Could use a bit more, not quite long enough. Back onto our block of wood. Spin the pin vise. And file the end of the tapered pin down to a 45-degree bevel. It's looking alright. Okay, now back again with our fine file onto the end. Smooth it down, take off any rough marks that were left by the coarser file. Turn the pin vise in your hand. Right, now back to our bevel. We'll smooth our bevel off. Catching a little bit, so it's not finished yet. A little bit closer to the tip of it. That's feeling pretty good. Right, I think that's about it. The tapered pin out of our pin vise. Preferably don't drop it, but we just did. Find the skinnier end, then align it with the hole in the post, and it fits in rather nicely. So what we'll do now is we'll put a pair of pliers on the end of the tapered pin and on the post, give it a light squeeze so that it fits in and stays there. So that's our new tapered pin we've got in there. The same as the other ones over here. You can see the 45-degree angle on them.